If participating via internet, please click the raise hand feature located within the Zoom application screen. If connected via telephone, please dial *9. Okay, before we get going, I have one other announcement. I want to go through our public decorum process or rules. During any public comment before the full board, remarks shall be addressed to the board, not to individual directors or staff, and not to the audience. Prohibited actions include obscene, vulgar, or abusive language, shouting or yelling, use of electronic devices unless they are in silent mode, disorderly conduct. The presiding officer shall order removed from the meeting room any person who commits the following acts in respect to a board meeting: disorderly, contemptuous, or insolent behavior toward the board or staff or any member thereof, tending to interrupt the due and orderly process of said meeting. Breach of peace, boisterous conduct, violent disturbance tending to interrupt the process. Disobedience of any lawful order of the presiding officer, which shall include the order to be seated or refrain from addressing the board. During virtual meetings, removal will be carried out by muting the person either for the remainder of the topic in question or under the discretion of the board chair for the remainder of the meeting. Thank you. The board emerged from closed session at, what was it? 7:22, I think. And there were no reportable actions taken during that session. So I'd like to call this open session to order and have a roll call of the directors.
All right, Board President Naylor.
Here.
Director Green.
Here.
Director Oyserman.
Here.
Director Perry.
Here.
And Director Shea.
I am here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to the agenda. Does anyone on the board have any changes or deletions from the agenda this evening?
No.
Nope.
Okay. Hearing none, we'll adopt the agenda as presented. Thank you. Item D, consent calendar. Does anyone on the board have any questions about the September 8th meeting minutes or the bills paid?
None here.
I'm not seeing any
No.
heads nodding in the right direction. Okay, fair enough. Does anyone in the public want to comment on the consent calendar?
Yes, 1 minute.
Yes, go ahead, Stephen.
Hello, Board. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you. I do have some questions on the consent calendar. The first is an item for Marinwood Market for summer lunches. I noticed it was about $5,600 from Marinwood Market. I was actually kind of shocked that we were providing lunches to our campers. Is this something that we typically do? And do you get competitive bids for lunches? Because that seems like an awful lot for a small number of kids.
I would be happy to take this one. The lunches are purchased by parents, so there will be a direct offset in revenue for that.
So in other words, the $5,600 you've taken in the form of cash or whatever, and that $5,600 is the amount that you paid to Marinwood Market. It says for lunches and summer programs, so I just was trying to understand what that was about.
Every year on Fridays, you can do lunch, or you could do lunch every day for summer camps, and you just have to pay that in advance. So yes.
I'm curious on just clarify the expense part. So cash has come in and you spent $5,600 to Marinwood Market to provide those lunches. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So that's question number one. Question number two was a fairly sizable bill or bill paid to Bill Hansel. I think it was $28,000. I don't actually see the number in front of me. I don't have it in front of me. And you know, when we started this project, it was told to the public that the total cost of Hansel's services for the construction was going to be about $13,000, and that it was a competitive bid. It was under the more experienced architect who had worked with public agencies, maybe based on a different design. But now we're talking, you know, it's pretty substantial money, and we still you put the I would like you to make some sort of estimate on how much you're going to be spending for the remainder of Bill Hansel's services. Certainly by this point, you're already doing a lot of work. You must have a much better idea than you had even a few months ago. Can we get that figure from you?
I'm happy to address that when he's done with other questions. I'll take them all at once.
Those were my two main questions. I could go further, but I just want to keep it simple tonight.
Okay.
Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, on the bill from Hansel, that is for the second phase of architecture and design, which comes in as part of the building permit set. It was always known that this is in theory, the most expensive phase of architectural services. The other bids also said the same thing, that at a percentage of total cost as opposed to a flat hourly rate. The first section, the first phase would have been, you know, site plan design for planning review. That wound up becoming so much more expensive because we wound up going from what was supposed to be a site plan review to a full-blown design review, leading all the way into a presentation with the planning commission for the county that ultimately led to a unanimous decision that brought us right back to where we would have been through a site review process. So this is all for phase two for building permit sets for construction drawings and permit sets.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, hearing none. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Ella, thank you. And Bill, did I hear a second?
Yes, you did.
Thank you very much. Is there any further discussion on the consent calendar? If not, Tiffany, would you please take the roll call?
Sure. Board President Naylor,
Aye.
Director Green,
Aye.
Director Oysterman,
Aye.
Director Perry,
Aye.
and Director Shea.
Aye.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, item E, public comment for open items or open time for items not on the agenda. And, okay. Yes, Stephen, go ahead.
Okay. Please don't cut me off again. You were in closed session, and this was related to the consent calendar and financial responsibility. I believe you were meeting to discuss Eric's job performance and I would assume salary and review of the whole bit. And I do believe that needs to be public. I don't think you can just keep that secret. We have seen a pattern of surprise expenses and concealment of our financial health. There has been some, you know, improvements Eric has introduced, but we are seeing that monies are being moved around. And most importantly, basic maintenance is being ignored in the park with regards to accessibility and usability of our park. We have a pile of debris that's been a mountain of debris that's been in the park for the last month. It has never been moved. I don't know actually what's going on. I look forward to later in the meeting to find out what type of work has been done. But I mean, you know, we're paying professional wages, and I don't believe we're getting professional services. I don't feel like there's really much accountability here. Three of you on the board are leaving. I don't know if that's part of the reason that you see the disaster coming, but you know, it looks like we're in a lot of trouble, and especially if we don't know what the costs are for this, probably what's going to be the largest capital expense in Marinwood history for a simple garage. I mean, you know, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen to the district, but there needs to be a reckoning. That's all.
Can I take this, Jeff?
Feel free.
I scheduled the meeting.
There's no back and forth.
Hold on, Bill. I just want to let you know, Stephen, there is no action items. We had technical difficulties, so the discussion did not occur. We will be rescheduling the meeting, and at the point at which there's an action item, we will definitely let the public know. Thank you for your commentary.
Hang on for a
And
second. You were meeting for a half hour. So what were the technical?
I said the technical problems. The technical problems were people couldn't get onto the meeting. That's what happened. Thank you.
Well, you announced that it took to 7:28. So this doesn't make sense.
7:23. It took us approximately 10 minutes to get on a phone call. We were supposed to be on a Zoom meeting. Again, there were no reportable actions from our meeting. Okay. Anything further?
Not for me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and nobody else from the public wishes to comment? All right, we'll move on to district matters, item F. And item F1 is engagement of the independent accounting firm to perform the 1920 financial audit. Does anyone on the board have any questions or comments on, or Eric, would you like to present before we get going?
Yeah, I can lead into this. So we spent several, before even the last meeting, inquiring and reaching out to a large number of various CPA firms who do audits for public agencies, including email distribution of the RFP that was included in the packet. I had a few follow up with questions, and ultimately only 2 firms wound up submitting proposals. Many of the companies just simply stated that they are not taking on new clients at this point in time. I didn't really get into why. I just thanked them and said, we will keep you on our list for the next time this goes out. Of the 2 that came in, one is from RJ Ricciardi. This is the firm that has been doing ours for the past 5 to 6 years. However, this is going to utilize a different lead auditor because Michael O'Connor has kind of run his gamut with us, and best practices dictate that we need to switch auditors. So I've requested, and they have provided a different auditor to perform all of the forensic investigation of it, I suppose, for lack of a better term. And then we got a bid from a company called Thector and Company. They are out of Sacramento. They are a reputable firm. They have good experiences with government agencies, none locally that I am aware of, but they're certainly a capable firm to do it, and they provided a nice proposal. Cost-wise, they're not too far off. Thector and Company is about 17% more expensive than utilizing RJ Ricciardi. RJ Ricciardi, in my opinion, provides a nice convenience of being local, not to mention they are familiar not only with our financial systems, but with the financial systems of the County of Marin that we interface with. So they are aware of all of that. And then they also have a solid understanding of what our operations are, and we'll have a solid understanding going in of why we're going to have some variance between prior year and 1920 due to all sorts of program revenue restrictions that we incurred towards the last quarter of the year. I presented them both. I recommend we move forward with RJ Ricciardi, but this is obviously a board decision to make, and I support going either way. I think they're both fine firms.
Very good, thank you. Does the board have any questions or comments?
No, I agree with Eric, and the fact that we're going to get another auditor, a different auditor, is a good thing.
Understood?
Yeah, I think the board discussed it at some point that we should have a different set of eyes look at our books just for ethical reasons, and I guess this is also the practice among public accountants, right? So I think going with the Riccardi, but with a different professional, will be providing us the fresh perspective, but the background information will be in-house already, and the knowledge of Marin County operations specifically will make this process much smoother. So I'm very much in favor of going with RJ Ricciardi.
Thank you. Leah? Anything to say?
Yeah, no, I agree with all the comments previously made.
Okay. Siobhan?
I agree with the comments. I would have liked to see a more local firm, but I'm not willing to spend more money for a firm that's farther away that doesn't know anything about us to take a look at the books. So I think we'll stick with the firm, and a fresh set of eyes at the firm sounds like a good idea.
Very good. Yeah, this meets the requirements of changing the lead auditor, not necessarily having to change the company that has been doing the audit, but changing the lead auditor. I think it's once every, 5 years? And that meets that practicality. And also, as everyone has pointed out, the turnover from the lead auditor in the past to this gentleman will be much smoother and less costly as well. So that's part of it. And again, for facility of our own staff, getting to know a new accounting firm and understanding their requirements and lead schedules and all that other stuff is extra.
When it's all going to have to be over Zoom because nobody can do anything in person. So,
or in some Zoom meetings. And yeah, so I'm totally on board with that as well. Do we have any comment from the public?
Yeah, 1 second.
Yes, go ahead, Stephen.
As Siobhan points out, that these meetings will be held by Zoom. So the location, while we like to, it would be advantageous, it really is not that big of an advantage in the current environment. I'm familiar, we've had Riccardi forever in the district. And 1 year, I forget when it was, Bruce Anderson was on the board at the time. We had a different firm, and that year, all kinds of surprises came up. We did not get a good rating that year. But instead of learning from our mistakes, we continued on and returned back to Ricciardi. I kind of find it surprising that, we live in one of the busiest urban areas, that we can't find a qualified firm in this area. I believe a fresh set of eyes, especially given what has transpired in the last year, really would be very helpful. I have made certain statements that I suppose could be challenged about the ethical handling of funds. And I think if you look at it, if you have somebody who really has no ties to the district doing your books, that can maybe lessen the appearance of of maybe not doing things all correctly, and there to be a convenient business relationship, continuing a business relationship for many, many years, even decades, with Riccardi. So while technically, I guess it makes, changing the lead auditor, I guess maybe you can squeak by with that, but I would encourage the board to think in terms of really giving this one an arm's length distance, and starting with having a new firm take a fresh look at our books.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Is there anyone else from the public that wants to comment?
No. I would say though, Jeff, if you don't mind, that, when we certainly had our share of findings from RJ Ricciardi, and over the years, we've resolved all of those findings that they had as going through. And then the last several years now, 2 to 3 at least, we've had no findings through them, but they certainly had their share of findings as well.
Yes, but that was 6 years ago, right?
Correct. Correct.
Things have changed since then.
I would agree. Okay, if there's no other discussion, do I have a motion to approve authorizing the district manager to engage RJ Ricciardi and Mr. Pham as the lead auditor?
So moved.
Thank you, Isabella. Second?
Second.
Bill, thank you. Okay, any further discussion?
You don't have to vote on it.
Tiffany, go ahead.
Board President Naylor,
Aye.
Director Green,
Aye.
Director Oysterman,
Aye.
Director Perry,
Aye.
and Director Shea.
Aye.
You okay, Bill?
Aye.
Oh, good. All right. Okay. Let's move on to item F2, the district manager report. Eric?
Sure, thank you. The primary item I want to discuss in this report has to deal with our maintenance facility replacement project. In the last couple weeks, this thing has really started to kind of pick up a lot of momentum, so bear with me and I will try to keep it in order. Starting with our demolition permit was approved in the middle of September, and we were finally notified of that, so we were able to then move forward. Luke has been very hard at work securing cargo units and doing other legwork, and the entire park staff has been very hard at work getting ready for demo to move this. So some of the action items that we have taken forward, we contacted our electrical vendor, because prior to demo, we're going to need to do electric disconnects. They're going to actually have to move the meter, which is attached to the current existing facility. And then we're also looking at bringing electricity from where they're going to move the meter to, which is a utility pole that's existing out there, ideally, and doubling it all the way back to our temporary work area. So that way we can have some level of power, not only at the site for construction needs, but then also at the temporary work area. And we'll certainly, I'll get into that in a little bit. They are scheduled to meet again. DC Electric is with PG&E tomorrow to do a full assessment. DC Electric's been very helpful in getting this prioritized through PG&E, and I anticipate once they evaluate what our needs are, they're going to be able to move that relatively quickly. On Monday, the biologist who performed the initial biological assessment came out and did a survey of the facilities to be demolished, as well as the trees to be removed, and concurred and informed that there was no active nesting, no active roosting, and sent us a letter stating such, and that we are good from a biological perspective, which was a requirement to move forward with demolition. Today, actually, we were delivered 2 40-foot cargo units that have been placed temporarily over kind of by where the Gaga ball pit used to be, near the location of the tennis courts. That this is going to start to form our temporary work area, because even though we've got construction projects going on, we still have maintenance needs that happen on a daily basis, and our maintenance staff need to be able to work. The one thing I will say is upon a lot of effort and research and contacting of companies, I am not in any way, shape, or form confident that we are going to be able to move the existing modular unit. In fact, it's been there for over 20 years. Luke can obviously jump in and speak to this, but several of the companies said anything over 10 years we won't touch. But it also turns out that the wheels and mechanisms were completely removed when that was placed over 20 years ago. We've simply not been able to find a company to do it. I will say that Luke just this afternoon got me one proposal that's looking at bringing in a temporary modular office, much like you would see at a construction site that looks like a out the door cost for a 12-month lease of $7,000, which I would actually recommend. And now that I look at this, I think saves us money in the long run. So what I'm recommending moving forward is the proposal and the contractor who is ready to go in terms of demolition. All of the contractors, actually, let me back up. I'm sorry. A lot has happened on this in the last week. I sent out a RFP for demolition through the Marin Builders Association, through the North Coast Builders Exchange, which includes Sonoma, Lake, Napa, and Mendocino counties, as well as select contractors that are on our pre-approved contractor list that we've established with the Uniform Cost Construction Accounting Act that have so far joined. Of those, 5 expressed interest, all visited the site. 3 actually submitted proposals. The 2 lowest were approximately $19,000 for demolition. The 3rd proposal was a little over $30,000. It was also requested that they include an additional cost for potential demolition of the Park Modular office. The preferred contractor came in the lowest on that at an additional cost of $3,650. So in total, we're looking at just around $23,000 to have all of this work done. If we were to move the trailer, there would be a cost incurred with that, and then eventually this trailer would need to be demoed, at which point we're not going to be able to have a standalone demo for this and disposal at that rate. So my recommendation at this point, and I think really our only option, is to simply demo trailer, the modular unit, along with the park office, and then bring in a temporary work office that our park guys can use, especially during inclement weather, and hopefully we can hook power up to. It'll provide them a dry, warm, and secure place for them during the winter season. And that's kind of where we're at. I know that was a lot. I should have probably just read it word for word, but like I said, a lot has moved on this in the last week, and as soon as that first domino fell, it has allowed all of the other dominoes to come into play. We had to work diligently to time in the biological survey with the demolition and the tree removal. On Thursday, we start tree removal of the identified trees. So there is, I believe, 5 or 6 of the non-native Canary Island pines that are going to come out as part of this project. Our tree contractor has given us an incredibly good cost at doing this work, and I believe all of these trees at under $8,000, which is
That's awesome.
yeah, it's amazing.
Oh my
Half
God.
of what other people proposed, at least. And then that work is going to take probably at least 3 business days. So we have put out signboard notices in the area. I put something on Nextdoor later this afternoon announcing that, in short, we're going to need to close access to that portion of the trail and the park while they are in there removing very large pine trees. And then once that is done and PG&E has done their work along with DC Electric, we will be able to cap the water and the sewer that is running into there and actually begin demolition, which I anticipate will happen within the next 2 weeks.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah, a lot of things moving. We've reached out and tried to contact some of the horseshoe players that use the pits on Friday nights to let them know that that is most likely not going to be an option. There will be no tree removal work on Saturday or Sunday. So he'll start Thursday and most likely finish Monday, but it could go into Tuesday, possibly even Wednesday, depending on the scope of work for that. Again, we'll have temporary fencing closing off that entire area. And we are hopeful, depending on the work, that we will be able to potentially open the trail and the area possibly for Saturday or Sunday and Sunday.
Okay, questions? Yes, go ahead.
Could we just put A-frames up also so that people who are not on Nextdoor are not getting the email?
They're already there.
Okay, perfect.
Other questions or comments for Eric on the maintenance facility? Isabella?
You're muted, Isabella.
Oh, sorry. I pressed the wrong unmute button, sorry. So we're looking at 23,000 for the demo and then $7 grand on top of that for the office, right? So it's roughly about 30,000.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
How much more would it be if we demoed later?
I don't know. I didn't ask that as a standalone bid. I mean, just bringing people out tends to cost more than adding it to a project that they're coming out for already. Again, our hope the entire time was to be able to move the modular unit over and continue to utilize it in a dry fashion, no water, no sewer, just electric. But that's really just not practical or possible at this point, given given the way that it was established in that area. And not to mention, I mean, Luke's been working for the past 2 months at least trying to contact and get companies out that will even look at it to tell us if they can move it. So, and then without the wheel setup, I mean, that whole setup is you can't even put wheels or anything back on it to roll it.
All right, so very clear, no options, just needs to be done.
Yeah, and you know, truth be told, that thing, we bought it used and it has certainly lived its useful life, and then some, much like all of the facilities around that.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the board for Eric? Okay, from the
I had a
public.
couple other just items of note on there. You guys can read those. None of them are pressing. The park maintenance facility was obviously the big one, and a little bit about Mira seeking commissioners. So always looking for word of mouth referrals seem to work the best. And then moving forward with some of our other annual financial requirements.
Okay, anything further from the board on any of those matters? Hearing none. Comment from the public.
Yes, 1 second.
Yes, go ahead, Stephen.
So first question, I guess you guys skipped over a number of things in the packet, but we'll go back to those. As far as the park maintenance facility project, there's a lot of costs being thrown out around there, and I'm wondering where the cost worksheet is, and I assume the manager has that, Eric has that. Does he share that with you, or is this just kind of ad hoc expenses? I think I know the answer to that. I think the answer is you are handling it responsibly and looking at the expenses. However, you have not shared that as is required with the public. And, you know, Jeff, shame on you. You promised that you were going to be, actually, shame on all of you. You were going to have a public meeting to discuss the cost. And now suddenly everything is being hidden. And we know you're spending lots of money, I believe, probably in violation of contracting law. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know. I am encouraging people with legal experience to look at what you're doing. I don't know, you know, how this will shake out. I would really like the district to handle our finances responsibly. And I hope you do as well, because this is your legacy. This is going to be attached to your name in the community. With regards to the office trailer, I worked in the auction business. We dealt with these trailers all the time. And what Eric is saying is true. The secondary market for these trailers is almost nothing. However, it isn't zero. And it was really unfortunate that we couldn't keep this trailer as either a primary office or as a adjunct classroom. We could have, there are preschools that use these type of trailers as classrooms, and it would not only expand our business, but nevertheless, you got to get it out of there. So cost. There's additional costs that were unanticipated. There's new rental costs. We're dealing with all kinds of expenses, and it just feels like you're flying blind on this project. I hope that's not the case, but if you're not flying blind, then you really need to let the public know what you're doing, because this is going to be a permanent project. It's going to be your permanent legacy. And, if it doesn't come out well, I don't know what to say. Maybe you won't be, maybe you plan to move someplace else, but I don't think it'll be a happy feeling that people have seeing the district finances go up in flames. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Is there any further comment from the public? All right, moving on. And I guess nobody had any questions about the other items in the district manager's report. If not, we will move on to item G, fire department matters. We have item G1, which is the agreement between the county of Marin and Marinwood CSD for fire protection for CSA 13. Eric?
Yeah, I included a staff report and a memo on here that actually accounts for both of the next two agenda items. These are our annual agreements. They usually take a while because the costing formulas can be fairly complex as they involve prior year reconciliations and so forth. At the end of the day, these have already been reviewed by the county administrator's office. They're planned to go on to the county board of supervisors agenda as consent calendar items on October 20th for their formal approval. They fell, in line as they usually do with our projections released back in May. They are, in fact, they came in a little over on a revenue side by about $11,700 on the CSA 13 and about $2,060 on the juvenile hall site agreement. So in total, you're looking at, roughly $13,000, 14,000 above what we had originally projected for these.
Understood. Okay. Does the board have any questions or comments on item G1? Okay. Seeing none, does the public have any comment?
1 second.
Yes, go ahead, Stephen.
Yes, I understand through people that the county fire department is struggling with their budgets, and the possibility is, one of the possibilities being floated is taking back this contract, and they would do the fire protection for the juvie hall. It's substantial, and I'm wondering if you can comment on this, and if this were to come to pass, are you prepared financially to deal with the loss of income in these areas?
I'm unaware of that negotiation or even rumor, to tell you the truth. Eric, do you have any idea?
I've heard nothing to that effect. I don't know if Chief White has heard anything to that effect. In terms of the county taking over, they don't have a fire station within a 20-mile radius of here. I'm just not sure how that could possibly take effect.
Okay, fair enough.
Unless they want to take over our fire services.
Good point. Okay, Stephen, anything else?
Oh, sorry.
Stephen, do you have anything else?
Yeah, no, I mean, thank you for coming back to me, Jeff. This was someone in the fire service that told me this. Of course, it's not substantiated, so you can call it a rumor, but I think, you know, realistically, we have to be nimble. The suggestion that our fire department is taken over by the county, maybe that would be one of the options that they would look at. We would be a nice plum for them, and would solve some problems. So, you know, I don't know exactly, you know, the ins and outs of how that might work, whether the supervisors could simply declare it so, but I think it's something that one should keep in mind. All other districts seem to be suffering terribly. We haven't had staff layoffs, you know, despite, you know, revenue declines. But I think, you know, reality is, you know, people are scraping around for money, so we may be a target.
Okay, thank you, Stephen, for the comments. Parenthetically, loss of the juvenile hall is approximately $96,000 in this particular contract, not the larger contract of $623,000 for CSA 13. But thank you. Okay.
I'd like to make a motion
Well, I was just going to ask if someone wanted to do that. But
to
you-
approve the agreement between the County of Marin and Marinwood Community Services District for the fire protection and emergency services to County Service Area 13.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Okay. Tiffany?
Board President Naylor,
Aye.
Director Green,
Aye.
Director Oysterman,
Aye.
Director Perry,
Aye.
and Director Shea.
Aye.
Thanks.
Thank you. Item G2, same basic question, this time for juvenile hall.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agreement between County of Marin and Marinwood Community Services District for the fire protection and emergency services for the juvenile hall site.
And I'll second that.
Very good. Thank you both. Any further discussion from the board? Okay, anything from the public?
No.
Okay, hearing,
Hold on.
I'm not fast enough, am I? Go ahead, Steve.
I'm very patient listening to you, Jeff. So I guess my comment was on the juvie hall before, so I missed CSA 13 on the first one. But I just want to further to say that, you know, these ideas of mergers and deploying our services more effectively throughout the county, you know, really makes sense. And our little district here, we're subsidizing our neighbors, and everything can go away. We're the little fish in the big pond, and I encourage, if you haven't talked to the county, I think you should talk to the county. You should also talk to the city of San Rafael, but they seem to have a pretty good deal with us because we're providing services for them at basically no cost. In fact, we pay them. You know, we've got great fire chief. We appreciate that, but you know, the bottom line is that we need to be treated fairly as taxpayers. in this valley. And we also have to solve our pension and our healthcare issues. And the sooner we address this long-term problem that we're faced with, the better it's going to be for the district.
Very true. Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to speak? Okay. Hearing none. Tiffany?
Board President Naylor,
Aye.
Director Green,
Aye.
Director Oysterman,
Aye.
Director Perry,
Aye.
and Director Shea.
Aye.
Thanks.
Thank you all. Okay, moving on to item G3. This is a discussion, an appointment for the Marinwood Board Director to serve as the Marinwood representative on the MWPA Board of Directors. Eric, you want?
I have a brilliant idea. May I just go? Please.
Go right ahead.
Board Member Bill Shea, sir, would you do us the honor and become an official primary representative to the Marine Wildfire Prevention Authority? And that would be my motion to appoint you as such, and leave the secondary or the what's the official title of it? The alternate, yeah,
Alternate.
and leave the alternate position open for now, so the new board could decide if there is interest for this position. That's my motion. Thank you for, and I'm sorry for interrupting.
I'm not sure we need a motion, but thank you for that thought.
Thank you, Bill.
Does anyone else on the board have any input at all?
Bill, if you can't do it, I can do it. It's fine.
We could also have you assigned as alternate in the event that Bill can't attend one of the meetings. My understanding is the meetings are relatively infrequent. Is that true?
They're once a month.
Oh, they are
Thursday
once a month?
afternoons. Yes, it's generally been the third Thursday of the month,
Oh, okay.
3 to 5 p.m. They sometimes do run a little long. They were adding in extra meetings prior to the appointing an executive director. So there shouldn't be as many special meetings now.
I see. Okay, once a month, huh?
And right now they're all on Zoom, but where would they be if and when we stop doing Zoom?
Mhm.
Where would the meetings be if and when we stop doing Zoom? Do we know?
I don't know. Chief White, do you know?
I had heard the potential, good evening, everyone. I had heard the potential of rotating locations, but I'm not sure if that's really going to be the decision that's made or if they're going to try to find a central location where everybody can get to easily. So I can certainly try to look into that and get more information and share it back with the group.
Well, it would certainly have to be a large enough facility to hold at least 17 people.
Right.
Plus members of the public. Leah, is that, my understanding was that they, in accordance with their bylaws, are to have 2 regular meetings a year, and the monthly meetings have been occurring more rapidly lately because they have been, to your point, going through the appointment of their executive officer. But is that, moving forward, are they looking to have a standard regular monthly meeting?
I think so. I don't know. I don't know more than you about that.
Okay.
Okay, well, that's,
But the
That-
question logistically is that for this Thursday, there's a meeting this coming Thursday. Bill,
Uh-huh.
do you want to take over for that? I'm available so I can do it. Or do you want to do you want to take it over?
I think, Bill will probably be spending the next 48 hours getting over the shock. So if you could pick that meeting up, that would be wonderful. And I'm thinking he could probably take over after that.
Is the meeting this Thursday?
Yes.
I'll be still at the office. That's a filing deadline.
Yeah. So would that work for you, Leah?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Okay.
Are you sure that you can take it on if you've got the filing and everything? I just want to make sure that I'm happy to be secondary for now, and we
I
can
love you, Cora.
revisit. We can
certainly
revisit.
do that, and when the new board takes over, if anyone feels motivated or interested to
Yeah.
take the alternate position from you, you can have that discussion. Does that make sense?
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. I would also state, Jeff, all of their meetings are public meetings. So anybody can watch any of the meetings. If you go to marinwildfire.org and you go onto the board agenda section, they do have video links to all of the previous meetings as well. So it certainly can give both Bill and Sivan, as well as incoming board members, a taste of what the meetings have been thus far, bearing in mind, as I'm sure Leah can attest, as well as Chief White, you know, this is an agency that's really still finding their footing. So I now that Mark Brown is in place as the executive officer, I think that it's going to become much more into the actual functions of the agency, as opposed to the formation of this agency, which has been the primary focus through everything leading up to this point, at least in my opinion, at a board level, is trying to get this agency off the ground with professional staff leadership as well.
Very good. It looks like we have a public comment.
Yes.
Go ahead, Stephen.
So this is probably a good time to thank Leah, thank actually each one of you board members for the extra work that you do throughout the year. It is the hidden part of your job, and it's an important part. I think Isabella gave a great suggestion by with the idea that the incoming board, there's going to be a majority of them. They should have the flexibility to appoint alternates, and so you know, hopefully you won't, you know, hog on to those positions, because I think it's important for these new board members to you know, be involved in the full range of responsibilities. I'm sure actually that you don't mind sharing those responsibilities, but you know, basically I want to thank everybody for this good volunteer work that you're doing for the community.
Well, thank you, Stephen. Appreciate the comment. Is there anyone else that wishes to comment? Okay, hearing none. Thank you all. We'll move on to item G4. Draft.
So what is the formal, Jeff, just to be clear, what is the formal appointment at this point in time?
Appointing Bill.
I wasn't clear, eh?
Well, there was a lot of back and forth. So just so I have it and Tiffany has it, and I can help report this to the executive officer.
Great.
My
Okay.
understanding is
Bill is going to be the
gonna
primary
fill in.
representative to the MWPA. And for the time being, Sivan will be alternate, subject to the new board coming in, having discussion, determining if anyone newly serving on the board would like to take over the alternate position.
Okay.
However, for this upcoming meeting, Leah is still going.
Lee is going to the October 15th meeting.
Okay.
Complex, but I think we got it.
Thank you all.
No, thank you.
Item G4, draft minutes of the Fire Commission meeting of October 6th. Does anyone have any questions?
No.
Okay. No?
I'll just make a comment. I've already gotten new things for the covers for the vents that I have in my iClar. So thank you, Chief.
Hold on, let's see about Eric and Mr. Hanson. But thank you.
Yeah. Well, I just to touch on this meeting, this was a good meeting, Jeff, and I believe that the commission chair, Steve Farak, is on too. If he has any comment he would like to add, push the raise hand button, please, Steve. But we brought in Firewise, or Fire Safe Marin did a presentation regarding Firewise communities. It was very informative. It lasted a long time, and really kind of helping the commission as well as staff understand how we, what roles we might be able to assist in playing primarily in outreach and promotion of this. Jeff, if you are okay with it, before you move on from this topic, I do have the commission chair, Steve Farrak, and I'd like to pull him over to speak.
Please do. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I just want to say that it was a very good meeting. We had some good input from Mr. Hansen. He went over a PowerPoint, and Eric said that he was going to be able to get that PowerPoint and would be able to have it so other people could look at it. Very informative. We learned a lot. We are very concerned on the Fire Commission about fire coming to our district as it has in a lot of other districts. We're looking at a couple things, and we discussed this with the chief also. It was very informative from Chief White. We talked about how we could see if a fire is coming, and they talked about cameras, that they have PG&E cameras, and there's a website you can go to look at these cameras. And I was very concerned about that, and had some questions answered about that. We're also very concerned about being able to know if we're asleep at night, if we're going to be informed. So we're talking especially about Alert Marin and getting that out to the community. We're also talking about NOAA radios, which I've been bringing up at almost every meeting, and a possible plan for us to be able to distribute these to our community, and either at a reduced rate by buying a whole bunch of them at one time and having the public pay for them, but at a reduced price. Just something I'd like to bring up and see if you guys are interested in talking about that. And
I think that we had said that the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority was looking into that, the possibility of having the radios and then making sure that the radios actually work with what we have. And so
right.
I think that we should talk about it as a board, but we shouldn't move forward until we hear from the authority what their recommendation is, because there's no point in doing legwork that will have to be redone if their recommendations are different than what we possibly might come up with on our own, right?
Right, of course. And you brought that up at the meeting also. I just wanted to bring it to the other attention to the other board members so that they were aware of this. And I will keep bringing this up, and hopefully we will be able to get some progress on this. So that's just some things I'm just going to stay on top because I'm very concerned about our community. And that's about all I have to say at this point. Thank you.
Steve, did you want us to talk about also creating, fire-wise communities within the Marinwood?
Oh, that's, yes.
And the berries
absolutely.
and areas?
Yeah, it seems to me that it's going to take some motivated persons in the community to actually go around to their neighbors. And you really have to see the fire-wise presentation to get an idea of how big these communities, they could be as small as
You said like
12
3
people.
or 4. Yeah.
To hundreds. So being able to organize that is going to take some community involvement. And I feel that, somehow we got to be able to motivate the public on this so that they will want to do this, because it does take neighborhoods to do this. It takes people working together to be able to do this. So a discussion on how we could, nextdoor.com is one way of doing it. Walk in the neighborhoods is another, handing out leaflets. But people aren't going to be interested unless they really know what's going on. And to see the presentation would probably be the best way of doing it. And we were very impressed with the presentation that we saw. I think Savon would agree with that. She saw it also.
I think that Eric had reached out to see if we could get a flyer that we can fill out some more information and possibly have the web address where people can find the presentation and the leaflet, like walking around and leaving it at our neighbors' homes is probably a great idea. And I think the big issue is that we have such a huge group here and getting everybody to jump on board at the same time is probably going to be a little bit hard. So getting possibly people in little pockets of areas interested and organizing a group. And then as those groups are organized, they can grow with the people in the surrounding areas, or more people in a different area can be like, oh, that's a good idea, and start their own group. Because I think, what are we, 4,000 homes? It's a lot to organize together.
That's true, yeah.
So I don't know if the board has any other ideas. We were batting things around, but.
Well, certainly as somewhat of a model where they get neighborhoods together and they concentrate on a focused neighborhood to try and get CERT leaders, et cetera, you know, to take control of that and advise other members of the community. That model could apply very easily as opposed to trying to do the entire community. At least that's a thought.
Yeah.
I do.
They actually don't recommend trying to do the entire community. They think that is much too large of a group. And in fact, you know, limiting it to anywhere from, you know, depending on the scope of the neighborhood, of a dozen to, you know, 100 or so homes per actual Firewise community is what FireSafe much more strongly recommended, and felt that as they get too big, they just become monsters to manage, and they are much more efficient and better organized when they're, you know, more isolated, looking at neighborhood sections, you know, a few streets, blocks at a time.
Exactly. I have a question on NOAA.
Yes.
Out of curiosity, isn't that weather related? I mean, do they talk about fire too on these radios? I'm sort of curious what the advantage is. I look at that. My first blush on it was, if I was living in the South next to the ocean and worried about hurricanes all the time, that might be something I'd be more interested in having.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, and Eric were there and so on. But as far as I understand, it is a weather radio. It is able to be, if we hook this into the Marin system, in the middle of the night, they will be able to activate these radios. And they were supposedly, everybody I've talked to said they're very, very loud, and you'll hear it in the middle of the night. And the chief is also, we've talked, he's also on an evacuation committee that they're just in the earlier stages of figuring out who to evacuate, where and when. We also talked about COVID, as far as if you went to a certain place, whether there be COVID precautions to, you know, people that didn't bring masks, whatever, you know, whatever, a basketball gymnasium or something like that. So all this discussion has been going on, and you know, we're definitely trying to prepare for something that would happen in CS13 in Marinwood. So and the chief's been very informative about it, and so it's good to see that there are people working on the problem specifically.
Yeah, so they're little radios. I was hoping that maybe it could be like the emergency radio that I already have. It could work with that, but I don't know what that would look like. But the little NOAA radios, you could have them in your house, have them turned off. They will turn themselves on if an alert goes out. So you just have them in your house somewhere, and it doesn't even have to be displayed, because if they're so loud,
okay,
it's like that smoke alarm that goes off at 2 a.m. and you're like, and you're running around the house looking for it. I'm sure it's the same sort of thing.
So this could be even better than a siren, so to speak. I.e., if you had one and it was hooked up to the system that's alerting you, irrespective of whether it's weather or fire or some other disaster.
It's in your home. Yeah.
That's your mechanism.
It's more of, Chief White, correct me if I'm wrong, it's going to be used if you need to evacuate now, as a way to prevent things like with Paradise, where people didn't hear the evacuation warnings, and other places where they did not hear the evacuation warnings and were unable to evacuate until it was too late. So this is a way of preventing it by saying, wake up, it's the middle of the night, you gotta leave the house.
Exactly.
Sorry for my dramatic effect, but that's what I feel like I would feel like.
A reliable way of getting the word out to folks who otherwise may not have gotten it because the cell towers went down or some other landlines didn't function or whatever. This would be a surefire way of making sure you got notified.
I see. I see. Very good. That's helpful. Thank you. Thank you,
No
Steve.
pun intended.
Indeed. Anything else, Steve, before we move on?
Again, Commissioner Moreno brought about there's a field that's Eric probably knows it. I can't think of the field right now, but it's the county farm property, and there's
Right
grass
next to
growing
Juvie.
on it. Yeah, so he was concerned about that, so wanted to bring that up to the board too, just to discuss or to cut.
Yeah.
Essentially, it needs to be cut, but nobody knows. I should say nobody knows. It seems like it's difficult to get that taken care of.
Yeah, that's a former county responsibility that they've abdicated. So yes, we're aware of that, and hopefully we can get something done about that. I know Ron's on it every single year. So, you know, as far as vegetation management and all that kind of stuff is concerned, I think we're going to be hearing a little bit about that, and that's, you know, possibly a target in our area. Other questions on the Fire Commission meeting?
Yeah, 1 second. And thanks, Steve.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate the attention.
Yeah,
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, 1 second, Jeff.
Okay. Yes, Stephen, go ahead.
Hi. Well, it sounds like it was a very interesting meeting. Is there a recording available for that? I'd love to see the presentation. Also, you know, with regards to the radios, it seems to me that communities have been well served by alarms, sirens, and I don't know if we have a siren system in the valley. That would seem to be actually an improvement over radios, where you have to have the batteries have to be functioning in the radio, and you have to be within earshot of the radio, even if it's loud radio. If someone's hard of hearing, that might be a problem. If they're outside, if they're running, if they're walking on the path, wherever. It seems to me that the absolute simplest and actually probably the cheapest solution would be sirens that we could position throughout the valley. I'm just wondering why that isn't the primary way that we're looking at alerting people. Also, because Fire Safe Marin is, I guess this is the new organization that we all voted for. I mean, gosh, we have like almost no information in the minutes. I would hope that we could get more information, and it's not just that you guys need to know it, it's that everyone in the valley needs to know what's going on. So two suggestions. Really look, well, actually it's a question. Why aren't sirens considered a primary and superior way to inform the public? And also, how can we get a hold of the information that Fire Safe Marin is given to the district?
Can I start with this and then hand it over to Chief White, who actually can answer most of these questions?
Yes, go ahead.
I think the big thing is they are recorded, and I believe you are on the meeting, Stephen, so I'm surprised that you didn't see the presentation, but I'm sure if you reach out to Eric, he can make sure that you get that presentation. But Chief White, why don't you take the question about why we're not using sirens?
Okay, I'll do my best here. Unfortunately, I can't give you any historical perspective on why the use of sirens has not been entertained at this point. I will say that sirens, although they may be a great alert notification tool, they need to be supplemented by another source of information. The siren itself gets people's attention, but it doesn't really point to what type of emergency you have, whether you're having a hazmat release, whether you're having a earthquake situation or a wildfire, for example. So given that, I would think the siren would be effective in getting everyone's attention in conjunction with some direction that anytime you hear the siren, you go to your radio, you go to your Nixle. You go to any other source for the actual information that you need to be mindful of. But again, without wanting to cause panic, I think it has to be supplemented with some form of reliable and consistent information for everyone that's receiving that siren. So again, I don't have the history on the use of sirens in Marin County. I can certainly find out. I know there's sporadic use of them in Alameda County where I reside and where I work previously. But the thing is, even upkeeping the sirens themselves can be a bit of a challenge. You put them in the low-level flatland areas, you put them in the hill areas, and over time, you'll find that the sirens can become intermittent, and some are functioning well, some are not. And so it's something that you have to certainly maintain and continue to educate the public about what the different tones and warbles actually mean, because, you know, there's been a lot of, how should we say, transition in Alameda County as an example, and that may be true for a lot of areas, and maybe even true to some degree in Marin County, where people are not familiar with the tones and what they all represent. So there's a lot of work that would go into using the sirens. Again, it's a great alerting tool. They go back to, from what I know, World War II, where in Marin County and in some other areas previously, in the effort to look for enemy aircraft and sound that will alert to everyone that it's time to cut your lights and to be aware that there could be bombers or the enemy's approaching. So it's a helpful tool. I just don't know what the reason is that we haven't explored that up to this point. I can certainly ask about that.
I can tell you that this was discussed in previous fire meetings with the previous chiefs and the intern chief. And for the exact reason of that some areas might hear it, some areas might not hear it, some areas border areas and don't know which siren they're hearing, if they're hearing like their neighborhood or the neighborhood over. So it just is mass confusion and doesn't actually give you the information of what you need. It has to be followed up by other information, and they felt that this was, at this point, not the best way of doing it. So
I would follow up Chief White's comments to, you know, as part of the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. In response, first off, just for some clarification with Stephen, FireWise is not the organization, it's not the JPA that was voted. FireWise is a separate nonprofit organization, or Fire Safe Marin is a separate nonprofit organization that works on wildfire safety and primarily has spearheaded bringing in a lot of FireWise communities throughout Marin County as one of their primary objectives, and they've also are working closely with the Wildfire Prevention Authority. One of the tasks of the Prevention Authority as their core funding priorities is looking at a countywide and consistent and unified system for emergency alerts as well as evacuation protocols. So that is certainly something that the authority will be looking at, to develop a consistent countywide system that can be used in every part of the area so that it is consistent. They do mean the same things, because right now you have multiple jurisdictions doing different things. So that hopefully we'll have some forthcoming information as they research and study those better as well.
Thanks, Eric. Okay. I still see hands up.
Oh.
Are we done? Are we done with public comment?
It looks like the chair's hand went back up 1 second.
Yes, Steve, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I just want to ask, I was pushing for sirens, and I actually looked up costs and everything else and brought stuff to the meetings. The siren would be, as the chief said, it would be something that might be confusing, setting it up in the right place, batteries. There's a lot to the siren issue that may be more complicated than we're just looking at. And so to purchase a NOAA radio would probably be cheaper and faster. Also, we're trying to push for Alert Marin more, which means somebody's going to call you up on the phone. Also, Nixle, people get Nixle things on their phone also, along with the NOAA. Fire departments knocking on doors, neighbors knocking on doors, and also the CHP coming into the district to also knock on doors. So I think we just need to make the public more aware of this and present this information to the public somehow in a flyer or some way where they can start getting involved in this process, because it takes the people in Marinwood and CS13 to do this. So that's why we moved from sirens to the NOAA, and also getting the information out to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Looks like we have another comment.
Yeah, 1 second. Oh, hold on. Sorry.
Go ahead, Stephen.
Thank you. Well, I grew up on the East Coast. I think you did too, Jeff. We have foghorns. They've served for hundreds of years. Church bells. Audible signals are the traditional way to get information to the public. It's reliable. It's cheap. As far as in the several communities I've lived in, the sirens would go off at noon. It was a way to test the sirens, and if there was an emergency, and of course we didn't know what the emergency were, you would have 3 sharp blasts. So I hear what you're saying about the confusion. I didn't discuss it before, but I'm gonna let you know personally, I don't want a radio where the government can listen into what's going on inside my house. If you can turn it on, you can have listening devices. It's not, so there's a privacy issue there. And, but also it's, technically it really is not a superior thing. Keep it simple, stupid.
Sorry.
So I just think that you ought to keep an open mind on this. But I realize you're not making a decision tonight. So as far as the other question I had was the meeting, is it available online, Eric?
The presentation was recorded. I can get you a copy of that. The actual meeting, the presentation itself is an extremely large file and was shared to me via a Google Drive set up from Fire Safe Marin, and I believe they have it online on their website. It was their presentation.
So basically you don't want to share the meeting then? What happened?
I just told you I can get you a copy of it, Stephen.
The video copy of the meeting, not the presentation.
Correct.
Okay. So
I'm sorry.
post it online. I'll pick it up online.
Okay, go ahead.
All I have to say.
Thank you, Stephen. Isabella, you want to say something?
Yes, I would love to get back to the agenda.
Thank you. Okay, item G5, officer report, chief officer report and activity summary. Chief, your time to shine.
All righty. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for such a spirited discussion on some of these things. I think it's very important that we continue to look at the best practices and the opportunities we have before us, and I'm confident that we're going to get there, especially since I'm sure hopefully all of you voted for the measure that passed that's enabling us to really address the things that are important right now. And so I'm gonna not really go deep into my report, but towards the end of it, I want to share just a little bit about our vegetation management projects that we use for the first round of our efforts, our first phase, and just give you a brief overview of how we got to that point and the decisions that went into that and who's involved, and ultimately, what we're doing with some of the future next steps. Before I get started, I will say that I wanted to make sure everyone's aware that the Marin County Fire Chiefs Association today issued a red flag warning for Marin County. And so that being said, effective tomorrow morning at 5 a.m., all the way through Friday at 11 a.m., we anticipate that we'll have red flag conditions, including the winds, the gusty winds, the high heat, and the low humidity. And so we really hope, we've got just got word, and I forwarded that to the on-duty battalion chief, that we've got approval for a pre-positioning, which is comprised of several agencies who are deploying units, so that if anything were to happen within our county, we're already formed up in a task force of sorts with 5 engines and 2 water tenders and a strike team leader or a task force leader, and we can actually move forward pretty quickly to try to address anything that may happen within the county. And so that's something that we got approval from the state for, and I'm really happy that they're very supportive of the pre-positioning effort. I think it's a great insurance policy when we're facing these conditions. That being said, I'm also happy to report that the NCCC crews will be here roughly in about 2 weeks, 2 weeks from tomorrow or Thursday. Both the crews from St. Louis and the crews from Sacramento. The more well-trained and equipped crews from St. Louis will be coming back out. It'll be a different team than those who were here just a couple of months ago. And the individuals from Sacramento will be deployed and will be helping us with some of the, how should we say, hand tool, not power tool effort. But combined, we're really looking forward to them continuing to work on some key projects and help, again, remove more fuels and reduce our risk. Reduce our risk. As you all know by now, the executive director, Mark Brown, was announced officially on September 16th. And former Chief Brown and I are going to be meeting potentially sometime next week just to get to know one another. We haven't really had an opportunity to work together, although we've seen each other by Zoom and had a couple of phone conversations. We haven't had a face-to-face. I think that's important that he understands my interest both for Marinwood and San Rafael, and I think he's going to be an excellent fit for what we're trying to accomplish here, given that he's already very familiar with Marin, has a lot of established relationships, a lot of historical knowledge and perspective, and he did really well in the process and in the interview panel. I sat on that panel. That being said, he was a little bit torn between his decision to have to leave. I think he was assigned to the glass fire, if I'm not mistaken, or another incident that was occurring, and he had to bow out because he needed to really start his transition as the new executive director. So he really recognizes, that he was just one of many on those incidents, but he's the go-to person right now for the MWPA. And so he's hitting the ground running, and I'm really excited to see what's going to come forward with his effort and what he's able to put in place and how we're able to start moving. I've already had several questions that I posed to him, and he got right back to me pretty quickly with the responses I needed. Wanted to also mention that, as Eric, I believe, mentioned a little while ago, I will be assisting as one of the leads for our zone for San Rafael and for Marinwood on our evacuation study. And towards that end, before I even knew I was going to be one of the leads, I had reached out to some individuals from a company I'm aware of named Zone Haven, who provides, I think, a very, should we say, innovative approach to how they're doing their evacuation zone planning and or the tool that it is for real-time situational awareness. And so I'm going to learn more about that tool effective Thursday. There's going to be a presentation at the Marin County Fire Chiefs Association. Mr. Crocker has actually agreed to bring some of his staff, some other fire chiefs as well, who have firsthand accounts of working with that tool, either at the current glass fire or at the CZU fire that occurred a couple of months ago or just about a month ago, and some other incidents. This tool is going to be, I think, very, very helpful for our county-wide effort if we decide to move in this direction. And if we don't, at least we've got some understanding of something that could be helpful, depending on if this is a sole source situation or whether or not we can put an RFP out. So that's something to really look forward to. PG&E, they provided an overview of the wildfire safety improvement work that they've done in Marin County as of September 1st, and it appears they were really getting a lot of traction in key areas. Some of those areas included the installation of 3 high-definition cameras, roughly 50 smaller sectionalizing devices where they could further sectionalize grids so that they didn't have to cut power to a large area. They could kind of concentrate that PSPS into smaller areas and targeted areas. And I'm happy to say right now, I don't believe that Marin County is facing a potential PSPS. Unfortunately, where I live here in Alameda County, we're on one of the counties that are on the list for possible PSPS activity. So I have to assume that it's in part because of the work that they've done in Marin County already that the county's not really on the list. Partly because of that, and partly maybe because of their concentration and their focus right now is on the higher elevation areas in each county, such as Napa, Marin, Sonoma, and in the East Bay in general, anything 1,000 feet and higher, I think that's where they're really concerned about the wind gust and the potential for down lines and any other issues to surface. But that being said, there's still a lot more work to be done with PG&E. I think they're looking to continue to prioritize their efforts and partner with the agencies to ensure that whether we're looking for more cameras or we're trying to get some undergrounding done or some other vegetation management work, different projects that come into reducing risk. I think they're certainly willing to continue those conversations and or that investment as needed. And so I will be advocating for additional cameras because I think right now they're providing the resource and they've got a plan for well over 1,000 cameras from what I understand throughout the state. So I'd like them to make sure they got 1,005 or so for Marinwood and San Rafael above and beyond what they've already done. And so those conversations will continue. Moving on though, I want to just touch on briefly, a couple of the incidents. If you guys looked at the report I provided, I included some photos that I took of the Public Safety Center roughly around September 9th. And those ominous skies that we faced with the heavy smoke conditions where it was just literally almost nighttime. And the skies were just something that I had never seen in my lifetime. And I don't know that very many of us would have seen something like this unless we were overseas in a third world country where there was a lot of smog or other, air pollution. But this was just something that I hope able to look back on as a one-time event in San Rafael, Marinwood, and the Marin County itself and the Bay Area region itself. But unless we actually are more progressive with our fuel management techniques throughout the state, we could very well be seeing something like this again. I certainly hope not. But I think this is a kind of a wake-up call in many ways. We knew things were going to escalate year after year, but this is now having a really devastating effect on the quality of life in the Bay Area. So I'm hopeful that we'll get a lot of support moving forward on how we're able to address effective fuel mitigation measures. And some of those things could be even prescribed burns as an example, but those are bigger conversations that are yet to be had. And but we'll be looking at different things we can do to help prevent something like this from occurring again. The conversation is happening already at local levels, and I think it's happening already at the state and federal level as well. So the North Complex Fire, we sent engine 652, which included Marinwood's firefighter paramedic William Kelly. We also had Captain Ryan Brackett. They're all home now. And I think go back and I look further down at the glass fire. Last I heard, they anticipate that incident being pretty much wrapped up by this time next week or tomorrow this time next week. Lots of damage in the Sonoma, Napa, and Calistoga and other areas. And so if you look at the photos I had, it's the Castillo de Amorosa, which is the castle where one of the vineyards is. And it's pretty disheartening. I visited this place once or twice. I'm not much of a wine aficionado, trying to slowly but surely get my palate together, but this was a really nice place to visit. I learned a lot about the facility and how they brought these bricks over from Europe, and then to see this happen and see the images I saw here just kind of took me back to some of the things I've seen in the past in my own community and elsewhere, such as, Paradise. And so that being said, I'm really hopeful that moving forward, we won't be seeing this again in the years to come. We've been talking about Fire Safe Marin. They're a huge proponent of fire safety, as has already been discussed, but they're also assisting us with some of our efforts to provide signage. And so an A-frame sign that really points to red flag conditions is going to be put out somewhere adjacent to the Station 58 location and maybe right on the sidewalk area, but I want to make sure it's highly visible. We may actually put it further up at the corner where everyone can see and recognize that we have red flag conditions. We're also looking at trying to identify and purchase perhaps some new red flags that we can fly with the United States flag so that everyone can easily see that this is a red flag condition day. If you didn't get the word somehow or another through Alert Marin or Nixle or some other source, you'll be clued in by the fact that the flags and the A-frame are out there. Unfortunately, I tried to cut and paste the image of the A-frame. It wasn't working out. It would have taken up the whole page, and it was, everyone's seen an A-frame for the most part, I'm assuming. So I didn't go that far with it. happy to state that our total response times in Marinwood for the month of September actually decreased by roughly about 16 seconds. So I'm going to attribute that to our members getting out and getting out the door quickly, because I firmly believe that the faster you get out the station, the better your response time. Individuals tend to have habits when it comes to driving at a certain rate or a certain speed, and it also factors into district familiarization. So we've got some individuals who have been working in the district for quite some time, so they're probably very familiar with the areas, know the shortest routes of travel, and do so safely. But to trim off 16 seconds is a pretty good, reduction in response time. So just wanted to call that out, because I had spoken to, I think, the commission and the board in the past about my concerns that I kept seeing the same number a couple of months in a row. And I wanted to ensure that this wasn't just some sort of generic report that I was receiving that wasn't really reflecting what the companies were doing day in, day out in their total response times and turnout times. So that being said, I think I wanted to touch base, last but not least, on just some of the things we've been doing with our local projects, and just talk about the process a little bit. Given that the measure had passed, everyone was kind of, I'll say, under the gun to quickly get some shovel-ready projects together that were going to be highly visible, wouldn't have a major impact to traffic conditions, as an example, but it would also effectively address risk. Whether we were talking about open space, or whether we were talking about areas that were adjacent to evacuation routes or right through neighborhoods, for example. We wanted to ensure that whatever we were putting forward as part of our projects would be meaningful, but will also be high visible, but what we say shovel ready, but those things that we think could easily be accomplished and would also be CEQA compliant. And so, the California Environmental Quality Act compliance is a process where you have to file and go through a series of steps. And we thought our projects all met the CEQA compliance without any pushback or any sort of delay. And so those were the things we were looking at early on trying to ensure that we actually got some things out there that were meaningful, but at the same time very visible, so that the members could see, or the voters could actually see the benefits right away. There was a decision to withhold core funding, which is roughly 60% of the monies that we anticipate receiving. And that money is going to be held for carryover purposes moving forward. So the amount of money we really had to work with was 20% for the D-Space pot, and then 20% for local agency specific projects. And so we tried to factor in as much as we could some of the expertise from the individuals who have been working as vegetation management specialists, the chief officers, even some of the engine and truck company crews themselves, some of the things that we had heard historically as concerns from community members, and as well as the commissioners and the directors yourselves. And so with that, those individuals, we were relying on them to be the strategists. We were relying on them to be the ones who were the decision makers about how we should approach this, and what is the area that, for instance, we didn't get to that has the greatest return on investment. And so that's where the AmeriCorps crews became very effective, trying to get a lot of things done in a relatively quick period of time. And so that's why we're happy to see them coming back, because they can get even more work done. With that being said, going out, for the next several years and up to the 10th year, our goal is to actually have a treatment plan for all open spaces in each parcel every year, funding available. And so with that, that's going to be a big task. But the great thing is we're compiling databases right now that ensure that as we move and we work on projects, we're getting a sense of what it costs for each project. And we're also looking at the fuel loads as an example, and whether or not we'll have the funding available to address those things annually, or whether or not we're going to have any challenges moving forward with trying to address those things. And so it'll be a delicate balance, I think, of what projects to push hard on, or what percentage of a project to actually work on, just to ensure that we can make the money go as far as it possibly can. The other thing I really wanted to share, though, is that environmentalist groups, there's a citizen oversight committee that's being formed up right now, and the environmentalist groups like ESP, they're going to be a key component of overseeing what's actually taking place. And also their feedback and input is going to be important as we move into the next phase of projects. While they won't determine the outcomes and the decisions that are made, their input is valued. And we want to make sure they understand that we rely heavily on them to provide us with information that we don't have as subject matter experts, especially when you talk about sustainability and things that are not really in our area of expertise in some instances. These are people that really study and know environment and understand the ecology in a way that maybe some of us do not. And so that input is going to be very important for us moving forward. But it's just helpful to know that that input doesn't direct what happens. It just helps shape what we're doing. And so we want to partner with everyone, and we want to ensure that everyone's voice is heard, because it is important to us. And it really factors into, I think personally, a better overall outcome in the way we approach and do things, because there's some things we can't consider that the neighbors themselves and the voters and the citizens themselves can speak to in a way that we can't speak to those things. And so, whether it be evacuation planning, whether it be, trying to address some of the native species and do it in a responsible manner. I know some people have concerns, for example, that clear cutting might be one of the things we're looking to do. And I got to tell everyone, even if it's a species that I'm not really fond of, I'm not fond of the idea of clear cutting, because I know the damage it can do to the environment. I know it doesn't really serve our purposes and our needs. And sometimes there's a counter effect, an unintended effect from clear cutting that people don't always pay attention to. And so we want to look at responsible thinning as an example, as opposed to clear cutting. But these are the kind of things that are going to be part of that conversation and dialogue as we get more input from the environmental groups as well as the community members. So with that, there's also a couple of committees being stood up as of next week. One of them is going to be the Finance Committee, and the other is going to be the Evacuation Committee that I spoke to them I'm participating in. So we're getting more traction as we move forward. And if you figure it's only been roughly about 5 months or so, I think we're moving in the right direction here. And I think moving forward, the work plan and everything that we do moving forward will have to be vetted by the Ops Committee and ultimately by the board.
Very good. Thank you, Chief. Questions for the Chief? I'm not seeing anything from the board. Public.
1 second, Jeff.
Yes, Stephen, go ahead.
Yes. Hi, Chief. You're probably not aware that we have erosion issues. And in fact, we settled a very expensive lawsuit that Eric can tell you all about, because the area did not have vegetation on it. I know you're concerned with clear cutting, but I'm concerned with our environment and our ecosystem here in this valley. I'm not sure if you're aware of this. This is one of the most pristine watersheds in all of Marin. It's considered as such, and we'd like to keep it that way. So when you have, basically a transformation of an ecological zone, there is a concern, an environmental concern. And I suggest that you don't listen to the Ron Marinoffs that talk about the dead grasses and the junk in the field, but you actually listen to environmentalists. And I think the county is much more astute when it comes to environmental management. One of the reasons we live here, I live on Quietwood Drive, and it's a lovely tree-lined street. I'm sure you've, next to the park, I'm sure you've driven up it. But I love trees, and I know all my neighbors love trees, and probably everybody in this community enjoys trees. It's one of the distinguishing features of this valley from other areas. This is not, Concord, for example, or other places where they don't have the mature trees around them. So we need to be very careful in this moment of being concerned about wildfires, that we don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. We're not being reckless with our natural environment. We're not overdoing it as far as requiring people to, say, upgrade their homes in very expensive ways where, you know, quite frankly, you may put someone out of their home because they can't afford the upgrades that you now require. I warned you ahead of time when you came that, you know, this fire protection comes at a price, but you need to make certain that the community is behind you. It's a little disappointing that, you know, we don't have these public forums before a decision is reached as far as, you know, what needs to be done in the community. I think unfortunately, it needs to be a bit of a negotiation. You're not going to get everybody to pull out all their plants and put hardscape around their houses and, you know, concrete roofs and concrete siding and all kinds of things that will make us safer, but it will also cost a great deal to the individual homeowner and also affect the quality of life in this district. So I guess I'm saying, you know, beware, because there was a kickback when they started to do this in Mount Marin a few years back, where people just, you know, they had to stop the program because they were way too aggressive as far as what they were requiring residents to do.
Thank you, Stephen. Another member of the public wish to speak? Yes, go ahead, John. Are you on mute, John? John, are you there?
Going once. John?
I'm seeing his microphone going off and on, so.
You
John,
should
give
be
it a try.
Okay.
Looks like his microphone's on.
You can't hear me though, can you?
John, I think we can hear you now.
Oh, you can hear me?
Yes.
Sorry about that. Yeah, this is John Campo, Marinwood CSD Park Commissioner. We talked about this issue at the last Park Commission meeting, and I'm happy that Chief talked about the process. That's mostly what I'm interested in, and it's not totally clear to me how the Park Commission gets informed on this process, because when we talked about it last month, we didn't really have any knowledge of the projects. And moving forward, I would like the commission to have an understanding of what the project proposals are, so we could get involved before those projects are determined to go.
And how would that work?
That's my question for you.
So Chief, is this something that is available to members of the public as well, that the Fire Commission could avail themselves of?
Actually, this is the first time I've had anyone from the Park Commission speak to having an interest in what the projects are and them having input. So I'd have to bring that information back and find out, you know, what role they would have in this and what information we would share. But I don't foresee them not being able to have a voice, and at least, you know, being able to have audience with them to understand their concerns and somehow or another be responsive to those concerns as best we could. So just need a little more understanding about what areas that, you know, you may be concerned about, and or some contact information so I can get back to them. That would be helpful.
Yeah, I can. Eric, can you share my contact with the chief? Yep, and get us in touch. I mean, I'm a member of the Park Commission, so it feels it's under our purview to assess projects being considered in park and open space land. So we would want to review those projects before they were approved.
Chief, these projects are being administered and reviewed and approved, from within the MWPA, are they not? I mean, I'm not sure. Once a decision is made about a project, is there a second vetting process with the local community that's necessary? I guess I don't understand.
Well, I think what we've been relying on is what we consider the subject matter experts to actually put forward the projects. Again, especially this first waiver projects that we were working on, and that pushes forward to the ops committee who reviews the projects. Once they get approval, then they can put a project sheet forward and then ultimately go through the process and get ultimate board approval for those projects. But in the interim, I'm not so clear on the park commission's role in the actual clearing of vegetation and or they're needing to provide their sign off on something per se. So that's an area that I'm going to have to certainly do a little more, how should we say, research on to make sure I don't give a misanswer and lead someone down the wrong path thinking one way when it's really another way. And so, again, this is the first time I've heard of a park commission and anyone in Marin County speaking to their interest and or concern about the projects that are being done within their jurisdiction or in their vicinity.
Maybe I'm misunderstanding the process, but if, I'm a park commissioner on the Marinwood CSD, and this work is happening on Marinwood CSD lands, it feels like I would be negligent not to look at the projects before they were approved. And so therefore, wanting to know, what are the BMPs for the work? Are there nesting surveys done prior to the work? What's the plan to deal with invasive species? What's the plan to look for endangered species? All of that type of information, I would like to have an understanding before these projects start.
So again, I think that's why I spoke to the community groups and the environmentalists who will be participating in reviewing some of these things to understand whether or not we're crossing a threshold that we don't want to cross, as an example. And so that's where their input factors into what we're trying to accomplish. So again, I mentioned the inclusiveness of this. I just don't, as I indicated before, these are projects that have been submitted for approval. And so with that, I'm not clear on your role in the approval process. And that's what I don't want to speak to. I understand you wanting to review and be familiar with and understand, but I don't want to misspeak on your authority in this situation, even though it's happening on areas that you have responsibility and oversight for. So just want to, I'm not overstepping the bounds, but also over delivering or over promising rather.
Well, and I recognize that our commission is an advisory commission, so we don't have the authority to approve or deny it, but it seems we would have the authority to make an advisory recommendation to the board.
And so again, I bring you back to the idea that we do have the citizen advisory committees that's being established, and we do have the environmental personnel that'll be involved in this process. And so I think maybe that's where there's a good segue there, or maybe there's just a conversation specifically between those individuals that are responsible for establishing projects to just loop you in early on. Hey, this is a conversation. We want you to understand what we're looking at, what areas, what parcels, what actions we're looking to take, and get your feedback to see whether or not it's something that you think is going to be problematic. Because what we don't want to do is do something where we have an unintended consequence, and we could have actually taken some proactive steps with valuable input.
Okay.
Chief, one of the things that we've proposed to both commissions is conducting a joint meeting as we're looking at, future projects and going down the line and, kind of walking through the process on how, high risk areas are identified, what treatments are being recommended and which projects are being prioritized.
Okay, that makes sense. Again, I'm in the way of being collaborative. That's one of the things I really pride myself on, is trying to make sure that I'm I'm extending opportunities for folks to have access and or a voice in this situation, because as I stated before, no one or no small group of people can really know all they need to know when it comes to this. And so when you get a couple of more subject matter experts in the conversation, it makes for a better outcome, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I know members on the ESP, but they don't live in this community. So even though they're maybe subject matter experts, they're not necessarily local in this neighborhood.
Got it. No, that's
Okay. In the interest of time, I think we need to move on. Thank you, John, for your comments. Thank you, Chief, for your responses. Okay. Item G6, next Fire Commission meeting, November 3rd, 2020. Okay, let's move on. Item H, Park and Rec matters. Draft minutes of the Park and Rec Commission meeting of September 22nd. Are there any questions from the board on those minutes? No? Okay. Hearing none. Questions from the public? Yeah, go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, thanks. Once again, I did listen to this meeting, the Park and Rec Commission meeting, and I thought that John Campo made, as he did this evening, made a very passionate argument in favor of reviewing environmental projects that affect our parks and open space. I really want someone with knowledge of our parks and open space and environmental issues like John has in his profession. I want them looking out for the interest of our parks, basically. And to shortchange him out of the discussion is really to deny good government, basically. The chief and the fire professionals, they want to clear cut stuff. They want to cut paths. I understand that, and it's absolutely appropriate and a subject of discussion. But we also know that these fire breaks don't always work. There's a cost to everything. And so what we need to do as a community is to balance those costs. So the bottom line, this is about the meeting minutes. There's nothing there. There's absolutely nothing for the public to understand what the real issues are before the board with regards to our parks and open space. And I just once again, I'm glad we have people looking out for the parks. So thank you, John.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. I think the opposite side of that coin is that I think that taxpayers have passed a measure to make sure that appropriate oversight is occurring when these projects are vetted, and one has to be concerned about different layers of approval holding up something that's as serious as the work that they are doing. I do believe that they have professionals that are making these evaluations as well. And we have to be mindful of the fact that in some instances, there's an urgent need to get some of this work done. So that's something to consider as well. Thank you all for your comments. Okay. Item H2, the P&R maintenance activity report. Luke?
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks, everyone. I just want to point out a couple highlights on my report. Won't go into to everything. I think the report speaks for itself, but I did want to just say The recreation staff has been hard at work getting some new programs up and running in light of a lot of the restrictions that come with the COVID-19 guidelines and shutdowns. We've got a lot of new outdoor programs that Robin and Stephanie and Carolyn have been hard at work getting up and running, and those are going very well, and we're excited to be utilizing our park for a lot of new programs this fall. And now with Marin County moving to Tier 2, we've been given the green light to be able to add in some of our more traditional indoor programs, and we're slowly getting those started up, and we'll be advertising those in the coming weeks. We've also been able to get our preschool program or a small sort of small version of that up and running this last couple of weeks, and it's going very well, and that will slowly transition as guidelines permit to a more traditional preschool program. So we're excited about a lot of our classes returning and new classes starting. So I want to thank our recreation staff for working so hard to do a lot of research and promotion and reach out and be able to get a lot of these programs started. So that's been exciting. I have included I think a request we had last meeting, our summer financials in my report. And with the pool season, I did decide to include the pool numbers, even though the season is not yet wrapped up. We will still have a little bit of revenue coming in and a few expenditures to post, but you get a general idea for where we're at on that. And I just put a few notes in the report about the financial report. So this is looking at our summer camp program, which ran from June 15th through August 14th, and shows we brought in around 368 grand, and ended up around 82 grand at the end after expenses. We're very happy that we're able to run some semblance of a summer camp amidst this pandemic, and cover the expenses of that program. So we're very happy with how that turned out. It's been very small. We were limited to about 30% enrollment because of the guidelines, and a lot of our expenditures did go up for summer camp due to needing to buy separate supplies for every individual camp group. And we ran we ran 14 groups this summer, and to maintain our staffing ratios, we had to staff those programs at our normal ratio, even though the enrollment had gone down. We weren't able to decrease staffing at the exact same rate there. But yeah, we're happy with how that turned out. And similarly, the pool, we basically been running lap swim, and then recently the Water Devil swim team has been swimming there, and that's been the main source of revenue this season. And we're happy to have been able to offer those programs and cover expenses. So I made some points in there. I won't go over all my notes, but I'll, if anyone has any questions after my report, I'll be happy to answer those. We have about 3 weeks left of the pool season, and so we're just happy to be wrapping things up, and it's all been going very well. On the parks maintenance side of things, the biggest news, as Eric mentioned, is we did get the storage containers delivered today, and the staff will be very hard at work to transition all of the equipment and supplies and gear out of our existing parks maintenance facility into the storage containers. And as we set up our temporary workspace there, that'll be a big task this next few weeks. And staff have already are hard at work making that move starting today. So that was a big, we're happy to have those, and just getting that underway will be a big task. But like I said, we've already started on that. Staff have already been busy, rehabilitating the turf in the 3 parks, and they're continuing to do a little bit of work on that. We're having to shuffle that around all the programs that are taking place on the turf so we're kind of doing one field at a time to make sure we don't have to shut everything down while those programs take place. And working on some other small projects around moving out of the parks facility, including leveling the patio in front of the community center and behind the community center, and rehabilitating some of our picnic areas, amongst other things. So staff are hard to work on all that. And I just wanted to shout out my note at the beginning, which I included in the Parks and Rec Commission meeting. I just wanted to acknowledge Marco, Callum, and Esteban for all of their hard work in this strange season. We have just 3 park maintenance employees that have a lot of responsibility with our 3 parks or buildings, the pool, all of the open space, and there's a lot that falls on their shoulders. And this season has brought a lot of extra challenges with just needing to worry about all of the risks that come with the pandemic, needing to social distance, wear masks out in the heat, and keeping things sanitary, as well as a lot of the air quality issues they've dealt with the smoke in the air. And the 3 of them have dealt with that with just great attitudes and had a great work ethic. And I'm just very happy to have them on our crew. And they've just been working hard through all of that and no complaints. And I'm just want to acknowledge that it's been a tough season for them. And while they're not out there fighting fires and doing some of the life-risking heroics of our fire department, I'm very proud of what they've done in their role this season. So that's about what I wanted to cover, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone has about my activity report or anything else Park and Rec related.
Yes, Isabella, go ahead.
So first of all, look, thank you so much for providing the numbers I requested at the last meeting. I appreciate it. I know the season is not yet completed, but it does give us already a glimpse at our team's extraordinary performance under these crazy circumstances. For you to be able to eke out a gain at the end of the day is surprising to me. I really didn't think it was possible. So you guys are a bunch of miracle workers there. Thank you. Also, I was wondering, when we have outside instructors doing their classes on our premises, how do we ensure the instructors' compliance with countywide COVID requirements? Do we expect any written assurances from them, or do we inspect it on an ongoing basis? That's my first question. And the second one will be whether we have considered maybe hosting a Zumba or jazzercise class outside on the lawn in the park, because that would give us an opportunity to enroll a larger number of people. And I'm sure many people are looking forward to exercising in a safe way. And I still believe that outdoors activity is the safest one given our circumstances. So that's my second question.
Yeah, thanks, Isabella. Maybe happy to answer that. With the programs that are taking place outside with some of our contract instructors, that is the first part of that conversation is how is the program going to run? What are you doing to meet the current Marin County health guidelines? And do we feel comfortable with that program and that instructor's approach? So that is usually the first thing that's brought up is, if these instructors approach us or we've approached them is, hey, what are we able to do to offer this program within these guidelines? So that's definitely the number one criteria. And then number two is we will go out there and just make sure that that's happening and stay in touch with the participants, the families, and the instructors to make sure they're meeting all of those criteria. And so far, it's been a no-brainer. They've come to us with a set of here's what we're going to do. You let us know if that works for you. And it's been a very easy conversation to make sure that that's happening. So, so that's actually has gone really smoothly, and they've only come to us because they're able to actually check all those boxes. So that's been great, and we continue to monitor that. As far as the question about some of the outdoor programs, we have been in touch with our instructors and seeing what we can do. And we would love to be able to do an outdoor Zumba class or some of these other, outdoor yoga, outdoor Pilates, especially with the weather being so nice so far this fall. One of the limitations is for some of these classes is having a safe surface for them to actually do these classes on. With some of these aerobic programs, you really do need a level surface without, the grass is unfortunately full of divots and old gopher holes that have been patched over, and it's not a very safe place to be doing aerobic activity, and we could not ensure everyone's safety on the lawn at this point. And the other areas like the patio, and some of our patios are too small to be able to accommodate more than a small number of people with the current distance guidelines. So we've talked about doing something in the parking lot. which comes with its own hazards and limitations with people using our facilities right now for swim team, using the park, tennis courts and whatnot. But we are able to now start to offer an indoor version of these programs with limited capacity. So that's our main goal right now. But we haven't, we've yet to come to a conclusion about doing an outdoor version of some of these programs that provides all the amenities that they need to do that. But we're still in talks with our instructors and we're hoping to get some things going. But
Thank you.
yeah. You're welcome.
Any other member of the board have a question for Luke? And none. Luke, thank you for you and your staff for all your efforts this summer. A great relief to us all to see it come through so well.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. You guys did an amazing job.
Thanks, Yvonne.
Question from the public.
Yeah, Jeff, before you move on to public, I want to also tag on to Luke's comments about our 3 park staff. They've been phenomenal with the work that they've done. And also I think it's important to recognize that for what's going to be an extended period of time after demolition and throughout construction, they're going to be going from a very non-ideal working environment to an even less ideal working environment for, the duration of the rainy season and the winter, going well into next summer before we can finally put them into a satisfactory working environment for them to be able to do their jobs and do it well. As Luke mentioned, there's only 3 of them. I think the amount of work that these 3 do is entirely undersold and underrated. They are incredibly dedicated. They've had great attitudes throughout. I think they've managed to continue to see the light at the end of what has been an incredibly long, challenging, and frustrating tunnel with this maintenance facility project. But just bearing in mind that for them, conditions are going to become less ideal before they get more ideal, and they're already pretty low in terms of what they have as far as facilities and working conditions. So,
Yeah, thanks, Eric.
yeah.
Good point. Okay, public comment. Go ahead, Stephen.
Okay, so actually I have a number of comments. Let's see. I'm going to start with the questions regarding the cost comparisons, summer 2019, summer 2020. I'm looking in the pool area. You have part-time. You have expenditures. You have ST salary, LG wages. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, definitely, Stephen. So that's swim team salary and lifeguard wages associated with the swim team season, which historically, before this season, the swim team would reimburse us at the end of the season for the lifeguard costs during swim team practice and swim meets, and as well as the salaries of the swim team coaches. We have a new agreement this season, effective start of 2020, that now the swim team does not, let me see. So they're now paying, Eric and Rick, you jump in here.
Can I help you out? We served as kind of a de facto payroll agent for the swim team for many, many years, and effective with this year, we're no longer in that agreement.
Right.
And they are handling and managing their own payroll as well as workers' comp insurance, all of which would get reimbursed for at the conclusion of the season previously. But now it is much more of a straightforward use agreement.
Thank you. Yeah, and so what you see there is that's the wages that the lifeguards cost for the swim team season when we started the season at the beginning of the year or beginning of March, and then that gets reimbursed as you see a line item up in the revenue section. They pay that pay that back to us. So we pay the lifeguards and then they reimburse us at the end of the season. So that's what those line items are.
Okay, so let me. I do have some other questions, but I really do want to understand this. Chris Case, who is coming in as a board member, is one of the people receiving salary. How many people, the swim team salary, how many people does that represent? That's the biggest cost on that line.
This year, no swim team personnel were paid by Marinwood CSD. So what you see there is that's the cost of lifeguards working during swim team practice. That's all that's included in that line item for 2020.
Okay, so actually, yeah, I guess, you know, my comments in general on this is you're comparing apples to oranges, and it's hard to understand. So to understand it, you know, we need to kind of normalize things. So, but also for point of clarification, Chris Case, who's coming in as a board member, is one of those people who is working for the swim team. Is that correct?
He is one of the Water Devils swim coaches. That's correct.
Okay. Okay. And so what I don't see on this is the overhead costs, your salaries, as well as, you know, the office salaries, you know, part of Eric's salary. That's not put into this comparison, is that?
That's correct. That's not included on purpose.
Okay, so that's a pretty sizable chunk of money, several $100,000, I should think. And, you know, so while you're showing that you're in the black here, I believe you're in the red in both years, 2019, but certainly 2020. And the other thing about 2020 is you weren't open for a lot of this time, and that, you know, you received our tax monies, but you know, we didn't really have access to the pool like we normally have. We didn't have access to some of the park that we normally have access to. So I really caution the board to make any kind of assessment based on the comparison that you've provided here. So that's all I really have to say about this. Now, as far as the parks, I'm very concerned about what's not happening in the park. And I'll just bring up a couple things. I have been talking to you about, you know, you've got a huge debris pile that has been in the maintenance area for at least a month. I don't know. I guess you've decided it's going to be a dump, but that's terrible. That's terrible use of our parkland. And I would hope that that you would also see it that way and think of ways to minimize the footprint, you know, for your department. I don't think it's necessary at all. I know in other parks what they do is they actually you know, rent a dumpster, and you know, they have a dumpster service that takes out the green waste, and I believe that that's something that could be easily incorporated, and it would be a lot less unsightly than what you have there. But here's actually the main issue that I do believe that needs to be addressed everywhere. Our park use has gone up tremendously since COVID. People are out enjoying our parks. It is a time to be social as well as to get exercise. And yet we've ignored the needs of people with mobility impairments. I wrote to you and I wrote to Eric several times regarding the ramp that is absolutely needed before you close off for the Quietwood Walk Street, or I guess we call it the easement, so you can get up and down that hill without falling. When the rains come and there's leaves down there, it's very slippy. And so there's a potential lawsuit that's going to happen. And I know we don't like lawsuits, all right? Right? We don't like lawsuits. We're trying to avoid lawsuits. We're trying to keep the community safe. And that's what the Measure A funds are for, is to upgrade our parks. So I'd like to see that as a priority. I'd like to see you not just give lip service about the clogged drain, the clogged drinking fountains. Actually fix it. We've given you a solution. You've had it at least a year now, and you can act on that. It's not a big project. So I would like to see more willingness to accommodate the needs of our community, especially the mobility impaired, as is your responsibility under Measure A. And so I guess that's pretty much all I have to say now. Oh, there's one other thing. As you know, over the years, I've advocated that we have an outdoor stage area. And boy, I just want you to think about that. Boy, wouldn't that be great to have a covered outdoor stage where we could have Zumba classes. That's kind of like a big idea now. But one thing you may want to think about, Luke, is just buying plywood and putting that down as a floor for people to do Zumba. I think that would work. You could just pick it up after every class. So a lot of stuff. You always have a lot of stuff, Luke, that I want to talk about. I would be interested in your response to some of the issues that I brought up.
Thanks, Stephen. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. I'll speak to a couple things because I know we're going late here, and that was a long soliloquy there. But we have the debris piles you see out in the park change weekly, almost weekly, maybe bi-weekly. So that's in a constant accumulation. That's not a month-long pile that's been sitting there. We do use some of those wood chips for various projects, and things go to the dump mostly weekly. So it changes. If you keep an eye on it, you'll see different piles there, and so that's one thing about that. As far as closures to our park and our pool this season, those were mandated by the state, and we didn't have any control over having the pool open. So we would have loved to have opened the pool according to schedule, and we would have done that if we'd been allowed to do that. So that wasn't anything that we were doing on purpose to prevent your use of our pool. We were happy to open it as soon as we could. So just thinking about that. And as far as drinking fountains and mobility issues, definitely take that under consideration as we move forward. But thanks again for your comments.
Okay, thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Luke. All right, item G3, next in our commission meeting, October 27th. And moving to item I, board member items of interest and requests for future agenda items. Does anyone from the board have anything to request?
I think just getting an update about the NOAA radios and kind of where that's going so that we can keep that going for.
Okay.
And then Fire Safe Marin, kind of how we can assist the public in organizing their groups.
Very good. We'll request another closed session meeting for next month as well. And Eric, I want to talk to you about possibly an interim closed session meeting to catch up for some of the difficulties we had this evening in having our full discussion. Does anyone else on the board have any issues or requests? Okay, members of the public. Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you, Jeff. I really do think that you are your own person, your personality, Jeff. But the way that you treat me so disrespectfully, as well as other members of the public, is really, it really reflects poorly on the district. There are serious issues that I brought up regarding accessibility, safety, financial responsibility, and you guys have dodged them all. You constantly dodge the core issues. And let me tell you, in life, reality rules. And so I'm bringing stuff to you that is a serious issue, and you're treating it with great disrespect and disregard. You may feel that you're powerful now, but the truth will follow you. That's all I have to say. And with that, I hope you have a wonderful month, And we'll see you again next month. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, item J. Adjournment.
I'd
All
like
in
to make a
favor?
motion.
I'll second.
Okay. Tiffany, go ahead.
Board President Naylor,
Aye.
Director Green,
Aye.
Director Oysterman,
Aye.
Director Perry,
Aye.
Director Shea.
Oh, aye.
Thank you all for
9:52.
attending this
Good
evening.
night, guys.
Take care.
All right,
Thank you all.
Good night.